Hello, welcome to the workshop. So today I'm going to be working on Delorean, installing mains power and installing a Raspberry Pi to control some of the devices on the Delorean. Now I have actually already done this, so we'll go back in time and see what I've done. Right, so all I'm going to do is have this little power jack in the bottom of the car. We've got two legs on this, long one and a short one. The long one is the negative one, the short one's the positive one. So I'm just going to solder the leads directly to this. Now this is going to be similar principle to the one that model mods offer. I'm not going to show you completely how I'm going to assemble this, but in essence, if you wanted to do a very simple power mod just for your own car, if you didn't want any of the accessories etc., you could literally get one of these connectors, a length of wire, solder them together and put one of these little connectors on the end, and you can plug that straight into the Eaglemoss power board, and that will just work for you. I'm going to be going a little bit more complex because I want to be powering potentially ELY mod at the front. I've got the flux capacitor coming from model mods that's going to be powered. I'm also going to be powering a Raspberry Pi, so I've got a little bit more complexity to this, and so you don't have to suffer through a lot of my bad soldering. I've actually done this one already. So as I said, all I've done with this, I've just added a bunch of cables to the positive side and the negative side. I've actually got 4 cables running off this. I've got 2 thicker gauge cables. One of them is just going to get a connector on the end like this, and that will go straight into the Raspberry Pi, so it'll have its dedicated 3 amp power. I found if I was trying to share the power with another cable, it didn't like it. The Pi is very precise when it wants its 3 amp power, and it needs a really good power supply, so that's why I've dedicated 1 cable to it. Branching off that, I've got another thick gauge cable. This will branch off into 3 other smaller cables, so use a smaller gauge cable for the next bit, and that will go off onto the flux capacitor and the Eaglemoss board. It will also give me 1 spare connector if I need it in future, which I'll probably hide in the engine bay, just so it's easy to get to if I want to add something else in the future. So on the end of that will go another bunch of wires, which are here. So this is a slightly thinner gauge wire. I have just soldered the ends together. I've made one of these cables a little bit longer than the other. The longer one will be going to the Raspberry Pi. The shorter one I will be extending with this little bunch of cables, which I'll put the little 2-prong connectors on the ends. So that's what I'm going to do now. This one. So now that's done, I'm just going to put a bit of heat shrink tubing over the top. Shrink that down onto the wires. slightly larger bit of heat shrink over the top. And same with this one. And this is not a video to tell you how to solder, which is why I've cut out as much as I can soldering, because no one wants to see that. So now we're at this position. So that's coming in from the bottom of the car. We've got the two connectors there for the front of the car, and say EL wire mod and potential for spare. We've got this longer one, which will have the Raspberry Pi wired to it, and then this end I've just got these two now soldered together with the additional cables, and we've got 3 additional cables there. So for the flux EM board and a spare. So the next thing we need to do, I'm just going to split these off. And I'm going to just trim off the ends of the sheath. There now, we'll shred off. Okay. Now I need to put the ends on them. So these are the ends that will slide into these connectors, and the way we add them on is I've got this little tool, little crimping tool, and just basically set it in the tool. We get our wire, push it in. You want a bit of the sheath to go into the metal, and then we just ratchet it and crimp it. Just like that. I'm just going to do that for the rest of the cables. So I've just got a couple more of these to do now. They're all now in there. Now, when it comes to these connectors, all we need to do is just slide them in. that a little bit more. And it will lock in. This one, just that. So that's now all the connectors in place. I've wired them so all the black ones go to this little arrow. Don't know if you can see that on the screen or not. Just about. Obviously, with a 2-pin like this, it makes no difference whatsoever because once you switch them around, you can put them in either way up. So if you find you got them in the wrong way around, just flip it around. Obviously, if you had a wider one, this is a 7-pin. Something like that, obviously, it would matter and dictate which way around you have them. So something to bear in mind if you do any bigger pins. I've done one in particular for the Delorean's switch. So I've got the GPIO pins running to a switch within the Delorean, which I can show you in a minute. So these are all the GPIO pins that equate to what was the Eagle Moss switch. I'm just going to pull that one out there for a minute. I've only got a 5 or 7-pin connector, so I need to run a separate one for ground. I'm going to change the colour of that one to the correct colour. But just to save confusion, I've actually kept these the same colours as the original switch from Eagle Moss. So this is obviously what I was saying earlier, make sure you got your pins the correct way around, so you know which way it goes into the connector. These are just run off the GPIO pins, so they just send a high or low signal, and that's enough to just activate the circuit. Still don't quite have a plan of how I'm going to be activating that in future. My immediate thoughts are hopefully some sort of web interface, and I can use my smartphone to control the DeLorean. My plan is I'm going to be mounting it just down under here where the modz RF mod would normally go. I've 3D printed a little mount for it, and I'm just going to glue this to the back of the DeLorean, and I'll screw the Pi onto it. These wires will obviously then run over to the switch. And as for the interior, you can see that I've already removed the switches from here, but I've 3D printed something that will go and hide the rest of it. Also, I'm going to paint it. Just happen to have brown on the printer, and I'm too lazy to change it. So that will sit there. Again, I'll just glue that on there, and I'll probably hit Mike Lane up for some decals for that, just to make it look appropriate. But for right now, my plan is to try and get the newly created power mod in. So lift this out, remove any cables that are connecting it to the chassis, which are not very many, which is good. Place that over there. Now this will be a very similar install as if you had the official Model Mods one, but basically it's going to be removing this. I'm going to be removing this cable. And to do that, I just need to undo these clips. As you can probably see, the Eagle Moss stickers didn't hold these wires in. I tried putting some black tape in, and that also didn't hold them in. Not 100% sure why they say to run them down here, considering that we've got clips here for what is effectively just the power cable. There must be some reason for it. Anyway, go remove those clips. And that is now loose. I've got batteries in this little unit, so we'll just remove those batteries. Obviously I've already removed the base for doing the connection. Screwdriver for that one. What I'm going to do is undo these screws to the battery box. I'm just going to pull that cable through the hole. Right, so I've run the cables through. I did make the hole a little bit bigger, just to make it easier to get the cables through. So now I'm just going to run it. I've left one of the spare cables for the front in the battery box. I've just run the other one to under where the spare wheel would be for the minute, until such point as I potentially get well, that would be the spare one, but the one in the battery box will end up being the one for the flux mod. But until the flux bands. But until I get the EO wire mod, I'll just leave it tucked away for a moment. So I've got the single cable, which will be for the Raspberry Pi. I'm just going to run this one over to this side of the car, and then I've got these ones that are going to run and stay this side of the car, giving me the free power supplies that I need for the EM board, the flux capacitor, and one spare. Okay, so I've got this hooked up to power now. I do need to rethink how I'm going to mount the Pi because there's just not quite enough clearance under here. I'll probably just need to make these posts a little bit smaller so it's a little bit flatter against the bulkhead there. But for the moment I've just plugged it all back in and just going to run a test. So flux light comes on, we've got the 88, and the dash lights up, time circuits comes on. If I had the interior lights would come on, and then the exterior lights would be on. But I can turn these on and off individually depending on what script I run. But hopefully I'll have a web interface that I'll be able to just turn these on and off in the near future. Just turn these off. Thank you for joining me in the workshop today. If you want to see more Delorean videos or anything else that goes on in the workshop, remember to hit that subscribe button and ding that bell. I'll see you around.